Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining our latest webinar. You can also consider this as an office hour session. And this webinar is called Getting Started with Single Store. And we have an amazing product expert with us today. His name is John. And I'll obviously let you do your introduction yourself as well in case I miss anything. He's recently joined Single Store, and if there's any questions, he's here to help you get started with signing up, utilizing. We actually are giving away $600 worth of free credits, which is actually a lot of credits. Like, I have been here for 2 years and I have still not used my credits. So John will be here to help you, understand how to utilize them, add them into your account. And I think they just get instantly credited. You don't really have to do anything, like no card information required, anything like that. So yeah, but John's your guy to ask any questions that you might be, like if there's any issues that you might be encountering related to workspace generation, upload, loading in your data. If there's anything that you are encountering while spinning up your workspace, or uh, you know just it can be literally anything. So yeah, we do have a Zoom Q&A button which is present at the bottom of your console. For everyone that's attending, please note that you are currently in a listen only mode, and we'll be only taking up any questions using the Q&A button. And we do have a internal policy to make it a point to answer all the questions live. And if we are not able to address those questions, we defer it to the right person who can actually provide you like the perfect guidance, like, because we don't really want to say anything that's wrong. So yeah, like, feel free to ask away. We would really encourage that, this session can be really interactive and be useful for you all. So yeah, John, please take it away. And I'm very happy that you agreed to do this webinar with us today. Thank you.
Yukti, thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to start sharing a screen. Absolutely, yes. Welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It is my first webinar for SingleStore. I'm fairly new here, and I'm really excited to talk to you a bit more about how to get started with SingleStore. So my name is John Bagnell. I am a product manager. I work on the developer experience primarily. I joined SingleStore nearly 3 months ago now, so it's been really great to be part of the family and working on this incredible product. But I'm really excited to talk to you just, kind of how to get started, some of the maybe use cases. We'll walk through the interface a little bit more. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory to SingleStore and kind of what people are using it for as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So just a little bit of I guess a little bit of history, if you like. SingleStore started out as an in-memory SQL database, distributed SQL database, which was, you may remember it as something called MemSQL. It was developed by Nikita and Eric, who were a couple of Facebook engineers, ex-Facebook engineers, and they were finding that MySQL just wouldn't or couldn't keep up with some of the high velocity, data ingestion analytics needs that they needed at scale. And it essentially was built as a drop-in replacement for MySQL, if you like, that could handle, real-time data ingestion. It could handle both analytics and transactional data together. Back then, it wasn't called HTAP. I don't think that was even a term back then. And they needed this kind of solution to help to unify this functionality that was needed for some of these, millisecond queries, because they needed in-memory, row store performance for really, really fast queries. So they invented MemSQL, and over time, obviously, it's grown and it's taken many forms, and functionality has been added to it, etc. It was rebranded as what you know now as SingleStore, and obviously, as it's grown up, we've matured over time. And it's a really mature product now, right? Really, really functional, mature product that's used and loved by many huge organizations around the world. For example, at its core, SingleStore is a real-time performant, transactional and analytical database for all of them use cases. So you can start with tens of gigabytes of data and scale it all the way to hundreds of terabytes or even petabytes of data. We really shine with that high concurrency, low latency query execution. And this is just an example of some of the customers that we have that use SingleStore. Adobe, for example, use SingleStore for supporting over 3,600 enterprise customers, 10 billion records, queries, and joins, and we're processing 70 terabytes of data. So it's not insignificant numbers. Siemens is another example. That supports like 100,000 concurrent users with less than 100 millisecond query latency. So it's a significant, really powerful and performant database. And also just to sort of communicate some of the compliance that we work, some of the compliance customers that we work with, such as banks. This shows our transactional ACID compliant capabilities of SingleStore itself. But why do people choose it? Why do customers choose it? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and painting a little story is when you begin with a application of any sort, you are obviously going to start with usually something like a transactional database, right? You're going to start with a OLTP database, a MySQL, a Postgres, something like that, and that's going to be your kind of workhorse, right? That's going to be the thing that is your foundation. And then over time, you find that you want to maybe put a caching database in front of that transactional DB because you might want to put Redis, for example, to take the load off some of these transactional workloads. So you introduce a Redis, and then your application grows even further, and you realize you need some real-time capabilities. So you might add a Kafka or something like that. So you add some streaming, and then you again might want to add a hell of a lot more analytics, for example. So you want to add a data lake and a data warehouse, and there you use Databricks or a Snowflake. As you can see, the layers start to mount up, so you have all these kind of use cases, and all of a sudden you've got a really complex architecture. And obviously with the need for generative AI applications, you need a vector store for your embeddings, a vector database, etc. for supporting that. So as you can see, these layers sort of like build up over time, and you get this quite complex architecture which needs maintenance and needs skills and needs people to look after it. And all of a sudden it's no longer one database, it is 4 or 5 different tools and techniques that you need to maintain. And that's really where SingleStore comes in, because we are able to unify much of this into a single box, if you will, that can handle the transactional, the analytical, the search, the vector. It can facilitate the streaming capabilities and features that you need. But we also know that working with existing tools is really important, right? So it's not that we're a closed shop. We're in fact quite the opposite. We work really well with a wide set of technologies to firstly ingest data, of course, and Kafka's a really common one. You can use pipelines, SingleStore pipelines, to ingest from Kafka streams. And the pipelines are great because you can obviously ingest millions of records in less than a second, and it's a really performant way of ingesting data from your various streaming sources. And the same goes for from more traditional transactional databases like MySQL and Mongo. We've got a feature called Flow, which is our data migration and CDC solution, which allows you to really easily load in data from JDBC or ODBC connectors, any of them that are compliant with that. So really easily done. But we also have capabilities on streaming data using pulling data from Iceberg, and this obviously facilitates your warehouses, your data lakes, your Snowflakes, Databricks, etc. You can stream Parquet files from Snowflake or your data lake of choice into SingleStore, and this is for really fast analytical support. Similarly, you can also push it back out, so you can use Iceberg to push data back to your data warehouse or data lake of choice. And then finally, LLMs. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the AI capabilities shortly when I walk through a bit more. But the facilitation of some of the tools, the services that feed these models, your Bedrocks, your OpenAI, Anthropic, your LLM providers, etc. So we can obviously pull in data, push out data from that as well. So as you can see, it's a very capable solution for sure. I won't spend loads of time on the architecture, but I do want to just touch on it really briefly. Now, in case you're wondering what the architecture is that, allows for SingleStore to be able to do this, this is, fast ingest, this is transactions, this is analytical queries and so on. Well, we're a scale out share nothing architecture. We have a separate compute and storage for separation, and I'll talk through this in a little bit more in our what we call the workspaces. And what happens is essentially is we have these leaf nodes, which you can think of leaf nodes as data is stored on a leaf node, right? And your aggregators are the way that retrieve and parse, retrieve, and compile the query to go up or down based on the ask of the client. So you think about like a query submitted to the child aggregator, depending if it's DML or DDL. It will go down, it will process, it will compile that query, and it'll submit it to the leaf of choice. The leaf then will query the partitions that store that data and then send the result back to the aggregator. The aggregator then, of course, sends it back to the client, the application, or whatever it is, with the response. So it's very, very fast, very performant architectural approach from query to data and backup. Won't spend loads of time on this, just reiterating some of the ecosystem interoperability. And we are obviously open to most things through our various connections, whether it's languages and runtimes, ETL tools, governance tools, etc. There's a way in and a way out with SingleStore. Before I go into the demo, I have a couple of bits to just briefly touch on. The first is the concept of a workspace, and this is how we're able to deliver the separation of compute and storage. So what a workspace allows you to do is it allows you to scale your compute when needed, right? So depending on your workload needs. So for example, you might have a workspace that is your transactional workspace, for example, where you have I guess the bulk of the work that's being done day to day. You have these workloads that run, and you also might have a really big, analytical query that you need to run a couple of times a day or whatever. You don't want to disturb your production workloads. So what Workspace allows you to do is create a brand new, essentially select a brand new compute, a brand new workspace that you can run the analytical query on, and then get the result, spin it down, terminate it, do what you want. So it's really flexible in just kind of being able to unify those different use cases and not distract or not disturb your production workloads that you've set up. You can also do this for things like, we have a concept of branching, which I'll talk about. This allows you to branch off your databases and do application testing or whatever it is that you want to do. So it's a very flexible way of managing the compute and the storage. The final thing is the deployment options, what we call deployment options. Now, there is 4 main deployment options that you get with SingleStore. The first is the manage, which is essentially your fully SaaS service, which is obviously you have multiple organizations within the same data plane, but it is of course fully isolated. It's got your dedicated compute, it's full security, fully compliant, etc. It's just how you would imagine a traditional SaaS delivery to be. And then as we move more down into the, I guess more dedicated areas, is the dedicated environments, which is a dedicated data plane where you have single organization yourself, but you're still able to utilize what we call Helios, which is our SaaS product, which powers the control plane. You're still able to benefit from that, but it's just yourself in there. It's fully isolated. You get a dedicated data plane. But it still means obviously we look after the VPC, etc. Now, it might be that you need a little bit more control over that VCP, so you can bring your own cloud. We can deploy onto obviously all the major cloud providers. With that, you obviously still utilize the Helios control plane, but you obviously are responsible for looking after your own cloud and deploying it onto your own cloud. This is obviously for more higher, regulated industries, for example, who still want to utilize the services that Helios provides, such as the portal, but you would need to deploy it into your own environment, etc. And then the final thing is the on-prem. So this is your fully deployed, you look after it all. And that is for, super regulated industries, etc., who can't have data leaving any type of environment, and it's all yours to look after. So kind of most use cases, if not all use cases, covered there. Okay, right. So let's just walk through. We're going to walk through briefly what the trial experience looks like, and then into just some core concepts, I guess, of SingleStore to get you started. So one thing I do want to talk about really briefly is the as we go through the trial. I didn't want to do it live because obviously it takes some time, but I just kind of walk through. It's really straightforward trial experience. Ask you a couple of questions just to get you kind of into a good place by the time that you get into the trial. Probably from sign up to into SingleStore, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes perhaps. But what you will get is you'll get a choice. You'll get a choice between two editions, and it's really important that we understand the differences between the two. The first of which is what we call a shared deployment, or a shared edition. And the shared edition is essentially you can run this for free forever. There is obviously limitations, of course, in the capabilities and the features that are available. For example, you get 10 tables, you get just a gigabyte of storage, you get one database, but it's free forever. You could run it forever, with limitations, of course. You may not want to run production workloads. In fact, we absolutely do not suggest that, but it gives you a really good idea on, running SQL, running some nice simple queries, testing it out at a relatively small scale. The other option you have is what we call the standard edition, or dedicated deployment. And what this allows you to do, this standard edition, is, as Yukti mentioned earlier on, is utilize those $600 of free credits. I would absolutely suggest that one because you get the full gambit of the full run of SingleStore. You get the thousands of tables, unlimited storage, unlimited multiple databases, etc. And those $600 of free credits, if you're using it every day, reasonable usage, I mean, 30 days it says. You could probably go longer, right? You could absolutely go longer. But this gives you a really good idea of what the capabilities of SingleStore is. So I would absolutely encourage that you select the standard edition and have a really good play as to the power of SingleStore. Okay, so once you get into SingleStore, you will be met with usually a home page where you can, you have a couple of options. I'm going to walk through it into, like, I guess, loading data from the loading data point. And believe it or not, you would click load data. And from here is where you would see all of the different sources that you can connect to. I'm in a trial edition at the moment, so I will, like, for example, I don't have access to what we call Flow, which is the migrating data, but you can of course request the access to this, and this just makes it really easy to move data from your MySQL over. That being said, you can still load data from MySQL using using our traditional means, of course, but it might be that you just want to have a little kick around. Well, one of the easiest ways of getting data into SingleStore is to just load it via a file, and we can take in a CSV file, an Avro file, and it will just pop that into SingleStore. You can query against it. It'll create a table for you. You can query against it just like you would anywhere else in a matter of seconds, obviously depending on how big your file is. The other thing that you can do is you can start to connect to your applications, via an IDE here, but this is all, very explainable once you click into it, etc. But one of the other things that you can do is you can load some sample data sets, which allows you to just, without having to load anything in yourself, just give you a really good idea in real world use cases what SingleStore can do. And there's a couple of options. You can even go to a dataset gallery. I've loaded one in already in preparation for this, called the sales data analysis from S3. If I just go to my query editor here, you'll see that I've got this one already loaded up. Now, the beauty of this is that it will load up a notebook, and anybody who's familiar with Jupyter notebooks, etc., will find this very familiar completely. And it is a walkthrough guide on how to load data in via S3. And it will do it for you, provide you all the code needed that you can just run step-by-step instructions. It'll create the table for you. It'll create the pipeline for you, etc. And it's just a really nice, easy way of exploring the capabilities of SingleStore from there. If you didn't want to load in your own data, of course, or you didn't want to load in or connect to an application externally. The other thing that we have, this is the notebook. Now, the notebook is, as you would expect, supports Python, supports SQL, and supports Markdown for annotations. We also have the traditional SQL editor as well, and it's just a lovely experience. I think I've even got one loaded up. And it's really just a lovely experience, as you would expect. You can just type in as you would, see all the the responses in the query window as well. You can see any of the errors. It's a really nice experience when it comes to writing SQL yourself. You can obviously save these and run them again, etc. And I look after the developer experience. So if you do have a trial and you find any feedback, then by all means, please let me know, because these are the areas that I'm really keen on making even better. Okay, so we talked about the SQL editor, we talked about the workspaces, sorry, no, the notebooks, and now I want to talk a little bit about the workspaces. Now, the workspaces live in the deployments, and you can see from a visual point of view kind of what these represent in terms of the relationships. I talked about the compute and the storage separation, but how they're connected, and you can see there visually kind of what that looks like, right? And a workspace, this is a workspace group called Webinar John for the webinar, and I have a couple of workspaces inside of it. Now, a workspace group is really helpful because it might be that you have multiple departments that you don't want inside a single workspace. So you can create your own workspace groups and have multiple groups that facilitate data interactions, databases for each of those departments. So it just cleans it up. It makes everything really nice and categorized, and the information architecture is nice and clean. Within those workspace groups, you obviously have workspaces. Workspace groups are set up so easily, and it is really configurable. So if you go into the create new and hit deployment, you will begin to create a workspace group. Now from here, you can configure where you want to deploy this workspace, the region, etc. You can also configure the size of the workspace itself. Now, the size essentially determines the throughput and the performance of the compute, right? So obviously larger sizes, you get a higher query performance, lower you get lower latency and more concurrency, etc. Because I'm in a trial, I only go up to S16, which is 128 vCPUs, terabyte of RAM, etc. It's still a lot, right? Don't get me wrong, that is more than enough for a lot of use cases. We do go up significantly though, and these are obviously on more larger subscriptions, larger editions. Of course, if you're interested in them, then they're absolutely you can set them up really easily. You can also adjust the scale, right? So this will be the scale that you will that you'll allow without actually having to change anything or configure anything yourself, as well as the caching. But when I go into if I just go back here, I'm not going to set this up now because I've already got a workspace group. But if I go into a workspace and I wanted to do that and set up the workspaces individually like this, you can also configure the sizes from in here as well. And again, we go up to S12 on this one for the sizing. But you can see the configurations are very similar. You can also create one and then adjust it as and when you need to, etc. Very flexible in the way that these can be configured and set up. Now, we talked about the separation, if you like, of the workspaces via the use case, if you like. So we talked about the transactional between if I have a transactional workload that happens all the time, I might not want to set up a analytical query on top of this because it will disturb my production environment. So I won't want to do that, and I'm going to set up branching in a second. But you can see here I've got the storage of my databases. Creating a database is simple. You can either do it through the UI or you could do it through the notebooks or the editor in the traditional ways using SQL or Python, or you can obviously do it through clicking create database. Just before I move on, actually, I will just show you the database kind of monitoring or database information. The metadata is all clickable into. You can go in, you've got all of the information as to the size of the table. You can even get a sample of the data set itself, just to show you what that data set looks like. It's really nice, really easy to navigate around. Okay, so I've got, so back to my transactional and analytical. Now, it might be that I don't want to, I've got this query that wants to run every day, right? So I've got this daily run. I don't want to run it on these databases, right? I just kind of want to create a new branch. And what this will do is, let me just create one now. So I'll create a branch, I'll call it what's this? BR customers. What this will do is it'll take a copy of the database and store it in object storage. And then through pointers, I'm able to manipulate my branch without affecting that, that production workload, just like it would in any, kind of version control, right? In this scenario, I haven't connected it up to my workspace yet. I'll just wait for this to configure. It shouldn't take a second. But with this branch, it means that I can either test applications, I can run a query on it, I can do whatever I want without actually disturbing those main tables. So I've got that there. And then what we do is you can see that there is a visual connection. So I've attached that workspace to these three databases. Let me just attach it to my BR customers and hit save. And it'll make that compute available, the database available to that compute, right? So from there, what I can do is I can go into an editor and I can run my query and do really what I want at that point. So if I just go into, if I can remember the table, I'll be very pleased. Bear with me a second. I think it's called new underscore S3 customer table. I think it's that. No, it's not. New S3 customer table. Anyway, you get my point. I don't, it doesn't exist, but that's always a fun thing to do. But you can see there, I've got that connection. Now, I've got that attached. It doesn't mean that I can affect these two production databases here. So that's great. Separation of concerns, we're quite happy about that. And we've talked about branching. You could branch off as many times as you want, etc. And you can create as many workspaces that have those connections as well. And it just makes it a lot safer for, application testing or running these big queries. Okay, a couple of the other bits before I start to wrap up and talk about the last couple of bits on my slide. We have this really helpful thing called Squirrel, which it's you kind of like your little co-pilot that exists, and it's just a bot that will help you if you are stuck on certain things, right? So it will help you to, with your SQL query, syntax, erroring, things like that. It will help you with documentation. It will show you how to connect to a source. It's just this really helpful kind of bot that sort of follows you around in a really helpful way. And if you need to reference that, then you can do. You can even use it in an editor as well. But there is a new piece of functionality that is coming, that is currently in private preview, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay, so that is the kind of long and short of it, the whirlwind tour of SingleStore, workspaces, databases, branches, things like that. I just really want to briefly talk about where am I? There I am. I just want to talk about the AI, what we call in Aura, which is our Aura Analyst. So we talked about Squirrel, which is your helpful bot for, if you've got issues with, you need some information on documentation or anything like that. But we also have landing in private preview called Aura Analyst. And this is essentially your data analyst that can understand the context of your data. It can understand, it takes your natural language and it just transfers it into really accurate SQL, but it can understand the context of the data that you're in. That you're working with. So if you need to, understand, customer behavior, you can ask it questions. It will find the relevant tables and columns, make the joins, and it will give you a natural language output that allows you to understand your data without having to go through the continuous writing of code in order to get the answer that you need. And we built this because we know that obviously the vast majority of our users are technical users. They know how to work their way around the database. They might not always be your data engineers or data analysts in that sense, but we know that people want to pull out information from data as easily as possible. Developers as well speak to this. So we built this because we want, obviously business users will want to use natural language to understand the insights of that data. And that might be to build their own dashboards or build their own reports. But obviously data analysts, it can really help data analysts who, kind of just want to write down, hey, can you find this table for me? What does this table tell me? And will this give me the right output for my dashboard, etc.? And you can start to collaborate with Aura as a kind of co-worker, if you like, pair programming. It will help you write the SQL that you need in order to extract those insights. And obviously we talk about data owners, SMEs, developers, for example. As an ex-developer myself, I write really poor SQL. So I'm just really bad at it. It's just the way it is. So things like this are really helpful. And I really, really want to use these to get I know what I want to get. I just don't often know how to write that complex SQL. It's obviously got easier as we've expanded in certain areas, but obviously having something built in just really speeds up the process there. So this is currently in private preview. We launched it at SingleStore Now, which was our conference about a month ago now, and we're really excited to roll this out into the product a bit more. And that is pretty much the long and short of it, Yuxi. I think, let me just double check. Yes, it is. Yes, hopefully that's been helpful.
All right. Thank you so much, John. This was an amazing session. Actually, one of the best office hour session that we have actually had in a long time. So thanks so much for putting this together.
I'll
And,
send you the payment now for that comment. Thank you. I'll send you the payment.
yeah, he definitely, that's not the case, okay, for anyone who's
I'm only kidding.
depending.
Yeah.
And so basically, yeah, like John has put together like all the amazing features that we have recently rolled out. So if there's any questions, you can either ask us. We are officially open for our Q&A. And like, even if it's like an unrelated question, like it's not very related to the session, we are very open to answering it. But if you feel like this is not the right time, it's totally all right. And if you don't have any questions, we can like conclude the session. Just just an FYI that I will be sharing a recording. And like you will get a follow-up email with everything that's related to this webinar in your inbox really soon. We'll be sending a recording. So if you missed anything, everything will be there for you. And even if John, if you want to share any additional resources, if there's any blogs that you want like for the
Yeah.
audience to have, please you can slack them to me, and I can include that in the email. And yeah, I think then we are good to go. If I don't see any questions in the dashboard, so
It's
yeah,
all
I
right.
think we can
Just
continue.
before we, sorry,
Yeah,
before
please.
another thing is, yeah, if there's anything, if there is anything that comes up after the session or whatever, you can obviously give us a shout. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well if you want to add me and ask questions through that. Just type in John Bagnell. I don't think there's many of us around from the UK. Or there might be, who knows? But yeah, I'm sure you'll find me at SingleStore. And by all means, DM me any questions.
That sounds good. Like our DMs are always open. Any feedback, any ideas for any future sessions, if you have any of that, my DM is also open. And yeah, you can reach out to us if that's comfortable. You can also reach out to us at team@singlestore.com. So yeah, I think that's all I had from my end. John, if there's anything else, now's the time.
I think we're good. I appreciate people listening in, and yeah, fantastic.
All
Thank
right.
you Lucy, as well. Thank you for facilitating.
It's always a pleasure. Like, thanks for putting this together. And for everyone that's attending, your time and energy really matters to us. So thanks for attending. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, great rest of the night if you're attending from another time zone. So yeah, I think we can wrap up now. All right. Take care, John. Thank you. Bye,
Cheers.
everyone.
Bye bye.